Welcome to Season 4 of Lawyers with Game. We have a really special episode today with in-house counsel from New Balance, Damika Fields. We're going to talk about sneaker culture, sports, and diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lawyers with Game. I'm your host, Darius Gambino. I am first and foremost a lifelong gamer. I've played on just about every console from the original Atari to the Super NES to now the PlayStation 5. I'm also an intellectual property attorney with over 20 years of experience advising clients on issues related to patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I'm with the law firm of Saul Ewing in Philadelphia, and you can find me on the PlayStation Network under gamertag EaglesFan71. With me today is my colleague Leah Leyendecker from our Minneapolis office. She and I are both members of the video gaming and esports practice here at the firm. Leah, always great to be with you.
Thanks, Darius.
And our very special guest today is Damika Fields, who is counsel global sports marketing for New Balance. Damika, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe so we can continue making them. And keep in mind that this is a general and very casual discussion of legal issues. It is not intended as actual legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you. So today we've got lots of interesting topics to talk to Damika about, including sneaker culture, sports, and diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. Damika, I wanted to first ask you about your path to your current role because it is such a cool and interesting job to have at New Balance. You started out of Tulane Law School, and your first job in sports was with the New Orleans Saints, and then you transitioned to working for the Minnesota Vikings for several years, and now to New Balance. Can you talk about your path to your current career and whether you were always interested in sports or whether that was something that kind of came along as your career went on?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I went to undergrad at Howard University, and when I was at Howard, I was a business management major, but was like always interested in sports. And I don't think that sports were heavily recruiting like they are now. So I definitely feel like the undergrad students just have an advantage on us knowing already they want to work in sports. And now the companies are recruiting more at the undergraduate level. But I went to Ford Motor Company once I graduated from Howard and really was, it's called a zone manager, but really worked as a consultant with dealerships. And I think this helped me to, one, as a young Black woman working in like rural Louisiana, it really helped me understand how to deal with people, but it also made me really think about what I wanted to do next. And since I was always interested in sports, I always had the dream of going to law school after I decided I didn't want to be a marine biologist. And so, as I got more comfortable at Ford, I just had to make the decision, was I going to stay or was I going to pursue that dream of going to law school? So after spending 2 years at Ford, which was great, I decided to go to law school, but I really knew I wanted to focus in sports. And I said if I was going to quit my job, which was a really, really good job, that I was only going to apply to schools that had like a sports law concentration. So I looked up the best schools. Tulane was at the top, and I spent a lot of time in New Orleans with my job at Ford. And so once I went to Tulane and the campus and heard about the sports law program, I was hooked. I already loved the city of New Orleans, so it was just really a really good fit for me. And the sports law program at Tulane, I can't say enough about. The career development office, I'm someone who was blessed enough to get all of my jobs through the career development office, and I'm not sure how much that happens. But my first job for my 1L summer was the NBA Retired Players Association. And so that was really my entryway into sports. They're based out of Chicago. since I was there in 2013, which seems like ages ago, the organization has really, really blown up. It's gotten much bigger, and it's just cool to see the progression. But that was my first legal internship, and we worked in sponsorships, and we are seeing how they're trying to get this small organization to grow and get their name out there with the retired players from the NBA and the WNBA. So that was my first internship after my 1L summer. And then came the Saints. And it's great to be in a city where the football team or the basketball team are really big. And so everyone is working for that Saints internship. And I was just really blessed to secure it. And that was my first, foray into the NFL, which was fun. The Saints are a great team. If you've ever been to New Orleans and been around Saints fans, it is an obsession, but a good obsession. I mean, they're ending church early to go to the Saints games, right? They're playing the Saints games over the loudspeaker at the mall, wherever you're at. So it's just really cool to see that fan base, especially because I moved so much growing up that I really was never in a city for long enough to really take advantage of having a professional team. So the Saints were my first NFL internship. And then I secured the internship for the Vikings after after my 2L year to go to be the internship following my 3L year. And so it started off as a 6-week internship. I took the 3-day Louisiana bar, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, ended Friday, and I left for Minnesota on that Saturday and started that Monday. So it was a really, really quick turnaround. But the Vikings internship was great. Just being there was great. I didn't know it was going to turn into full time. I hoped it did. I prayed it did. I worked and hoped that was going to be the outcome, but I did not know I was going to get extended until the day before I was set to leave. And so it really was just things working together. My mentor that I made there, the former COO, was just great and really leaned into teaching me and the other interns. And I think the Vikings internship program was one of the best in sports because we really had a chance to learn how to draft and to have hands-on experiences. And it was just a great time. The Vikings had just opened a new stadium. They were about to host a Super Bowl, about to open a practice facility. So it was just a busy time, and there was a lot of buzz around the team. And so after my first 6 weeks, once I got the extension, I just put my head down and worked, took another bar exam, worked for our former COO in a chief of staff capacity for 6 months, and then transitioned into associate counsel, where I was really a generalist. And it was just a really, really great experience. So many things happened. The people there were great at teaching and really, really leaning in. And then when I was thinking about it was time to make a change or explore new opportunities, New Balance reached out. And so once they reached out, the timing was right. I didn't know much about the company. I didn't know much about sneakers. I think I've told Leah before. I did not wear sneakers or anything like that. But I remember researching the company, asking my sneakerhead friends, okay, like, what do you think about New Balance? And I read a few articles about, like, okay, New Balance is starting to trend up. New Balance was doing some collabs at the time with some really good people that were like in the culture, hip hop culture, sneakerhead culture. And so after reading that, I'm like, okay, I'll take the leap. This is a great position. I get to really, really focus on sports, so it doesn't look like I'll be as much of a generalist anymore. But I took the leap, and it has been great. It's been almost 4 years coming up in October, and just to see the growth of the company, the change of the company and where it was in the culture and sneaker culture 4 or 5 years ago and where it is now, where people are reaching out to me, my friends, my family, sneakerheads who really know what's hip and what's not hip, quote unquote. They're asking about New Balance. And so to see everyone interested, not just because you work there, but because they really like the product, it has been great to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's been a huge shift in the way that sneakerheads and feel about New Balance over the past, five to 7 years. So it's cool that you got to be part of all that, and you're still part of it. So, Leah.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit here, D'Amica, I had the pleasure of joining you earlier this year at what has quickly become one of my favorite events of the year, the Black Sports Business Symposium. Um, so I was hoping you could describe for our listeners a little bit about what that organization does, how you got involved, and have really helped to grow the event over the last few years, and what some of your roles are as the general counsel.
Yeah, so the Black Sports Business Symposium, near and dear to my heart, this year was the third year in Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining and speaking to our attendees. But the Black Sports Business Symposium really started during the pandemic, where a group of people were really looking to make a gathering, make a conference where Black talent could all be in one place. And it's for people who are already in the industry to kind of, mix and mingle and to make new connections, almost like a family reunion. But then also for people who are looking to get in the industry, because like you all know, when you go to these conferences, especially if there's a large career fair, it's really where are you going to get all of these companies from all over the country together at one time looking for talent. And that's really one of the great benefits of the Black Sports Business Symposium. So we've been in Atlanta for 3 years. I think next year we'll have to move. So we're excited to see where we end up next. But the talent and the attendees has just continued to grow. The speaker list has continued to grow. Having Don Staley, right? Having Coach Prime, having Kevin Warren, having all but one of the Black NFL presidents speak this past year. It's just really great to see how much it's evolved. And just looking forward to what will become in the future is just really, really exciting. As GC, especially of a small organization, it's cool to see how many roles you really do play. So I help do all the contracts, and I have one more attorney who helps me, and he's great. And then this year, I helped to lead sponsorships. And as we know, sponsorships and legal really go hand in hand because the business team can have the conversation, but a lot of times, the earlier you bring legal into the process, the better for everyone. So this year was really, really great to lean into the sponsorship portion of it as well and see how the sponsorships will build, and then also be able to handle the contract process and the negotiations, especially with some of our bigger sponsors at the end, and get everything signed and then have the sponsor show up and just have an amazing time and see the impact they're making and leave with great talent and a great experience, and they can't wait to come back. It's been interesting. It's a lot of hard work, but it's fun and it's gratifying, so it makes it worth it.
One of my favorite D'Amica GC moments from this year was when the gentleman doing
Oh,
unauthorized backflips off the stage, and everyone was like, "General counsel, are you going to step in here?"
yeah. Off the it was one thing on the field, it's the rubber field, so it's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't be doing that, but maybe I'll turn a blind eye. But I did have to draw the line when he was going to backflip off of the high rise stage. Like, okay, at that point, I did feel a bit like an auntie. I remember us laughing. I'm like, wow, now I'm that person at that age where it's like, safety first. No, you can't do that. But I feel like I made a great connection because after just engaging with him for a while, he was super open and he was sweet and he had an interesting story. But it was funny.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. D'Amica, one of the things we love to talk about here, obviously, is intellectual property. And I think one of the coolest parts of your job is the partnerships between your IP and the IP of the players and the other, people that connect with the brand. As you mentioned, like I think Kawhi Leonard was the first NBA player to wear New Balance, going on 5 or 6 years ago now, if I remember it all correctly. But now it's become a major brand in the NBA. I'm from Philly, and we love Tyrese Maxey here. He signed with New Balance. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., who also from Philly, as the face of your football cleat brand. And one thing I really love as a longtime skateboarder is the collab you did with skateboarding legend Natus Kaupas, who a lot of people might not. Everyone knows Tony Hawk. I don't think a lot of people know Natus, but he was there in the early days too. And I think it's really cool, just like the diversity of people that you have connecting with the brand now. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you go about taking those collaborations from like a letter of intent or deal points to like a full agreement?
Yeah, it's really cool. You bring up a lot of good things. Talking to someone who knows about skateboarding is always really cool because our New Balance numeric brand, I think in the skateboarding world, is really, really well known. But the shoes, whether you're into numeric or into skateboarding or not, the shoes are really, really sleek. My grandfather has a pair. He has no idea that they're numeric sneakers, right? Like he likes the flat sole. You can dress them up or dress them down. A lot of them are full leather. And so our numeric shoes really, really do well. And I don't think people know that or think about that. They probably think of like your basketball or your football boots and things like that. But numeric does well. So his collab, I was really impressed that you knew about that. And his collab actually looks really cool with the high top 480. But going back to the agreements, it's fun to see our team really, think about that the athletes they're going to sign. And a lot of times they'll let me know, especially if I'm really, really interested in the sport. And there's probably 4 or 5 sports that I follow regularly, even if I wasn't working at New Balance. So they'll give me a heads up. We're thinking about this person, I'll give my opinion. Sometimes they ask, a lot of times they don't, but I still give it. And I think they take it into account. But once the deal points are finally signed, and they'll send those over to me, and then we're just going to a long form agreement, right? And you always want to put your business points, whether it's the exclusivity, because if a brand is paying an athlete, then in the products that the brand makes or specializes in, you don't want your athlete or your ambassador to wear the products of anyone else, like a competitor, anyone else. You want them to wear your products or where you expect to see them wearing your products. If there's social media posts, or something that's really big for New Balance is community service. So if they're going to get a certain amount of money to go towards community service or refurbishing a tennis court or a basketball court or a football field, we'll, address all those things to make sure it's laid out and it's clear. And then another thing we'll address is IP, and you mentioned it. Signature product is big, especially with your bigger athletes. Coco has signature product. Kawhi has signature product. We have a number of numeric athletes who have signature products. So you really want to think about who owns the IP. And if the IP is already coming with the athlete, you want to make sure it's cleared. So if you go and sell a bunch of shoes or product with their IP on it, you don't get any, letters or emails saying, right, this is really similar to my logo that I had registered. And then that's just like a big, big problem. So you want to make sure if IP is coming with the athlete that we intend to use, that it's cleared, that you have the proper protections in the agreement. But then you also think sometimes they don't have their own logo and you create the logo. Companies will create the logo in-house. Sometimes we do as well. And making sure ownership of those logos is clearly set out, because it does come into play. God forbid you in your relationship with the athlete, you think Tiger Woods, right, and the brand he was with before, eventually if you don't sponsor the athlete anymore, who does the logo live with? And so you want to make sure that's all spelled out in the agreement, and we do that. So we take IP into account very seriously, because when you're signing an athlete at first, everyone's happy, right? It's the beginning of the relationship. Everyone's happy. You're going to be with us for 100 years and it's great. And then maybe 20 years down the line something changes and directions are different, and you want to make sure 20 years down the line, when the people that were working on the agreement at the time, whether they're here or not, you can look at the deal. There's no ambiguity. You don't have to go to court. You can end the relationship amicably and go your separate ways.
Yeah, it's a great point. Leah and I see those situations arise all too often, right? Where there's a huge question about who owns, a particular copyrighted work, or who owns a particular trademark, when parties go their separate ways. So definitely a great thing to think about.
For sure.
So D'Amica, I also wanted to ask you about two of New Balance's DEI initiatives. So I understand New Balance has established a partnership with UMass Boston that supports the diversity internship program. So I'd love to hear more about the goals and impacts that has had, as well as New Balance's Black Souls employee-led community, and your role with Black Souls, and how that group is helping to increase representation and amplify Black voices within New Balance.
Yeah, so I guess it's a common thread. I love sports and sneakers and footwear now, but diversity, equity, inclusion is really important to me. And so the UMass Boston Diversity Internship Program, I think it's, if I joined in 2020, it may have been like 1 to 2 years old, but it was really in its infancy stage when I joined. And UMass Boston is a large school in Boston, but it's one of the most diverse schools in Massachusetts. And so it is really great to see that we've created this partnership with them in that program. And when I joined, I heard like diversity internship with a school, and I was like, okay, what's this? I had to get more information. And what I learned was, because it had been really started in the pandemic, I don't think it had reached the highest heights just yet, because students were interning in the pandemic. They were getting used to even going to school in the pandemic. And then if your first corporate experience is really over the computer, it can really, really be tough. And so after I did some digging, I'm like, okay, I have to be involved. Why do I have to involve myself? I don't know, but I must do it. And so it's been really great to see how the program has grown. We usually have 4 to 5 interns a year, split between summer and fall. And it's really great to find the folks internally who are great managers who really can take interns, right? We're really intentional about finding managers who are good with interns, because some of these interns have never been in a corporate environment. Some of these interns don't necessarily know what they want to do. Some of these interns are just getting exposed to things like this for the first time. And it's, you want to be gentle, but you also want to teach. And everyone does not have that perfect skill set. So you really want to find the people who are going to lean into the interns and be gentle and teach. And it's really, you want them to have a great product at the end. But the best experiences I've had is when you see like the intern who was really quiet at the beginning and who was maybe late or had some places to grow, and by the end they're talking your head off because they've gotten comfortable, and they're always raising their hands in meetings, and they're always on time, and they've really just grown and blossom. Like, those are some of my favorite intern stories. And then sometimes we will extend the interns that have done a really, really great job. And so we focus a lot on diversity, a lot of women, a lot of people of color, a lot of Black students as well. And it's just been great. It's one of the things I think that gives me purpose, knowing I'm able to use my position in sports to kind of lean into these students. We find them internal mentors, or like I'm able to use my connections in the industry to kind of let them see what's out there. So it has been really, really gratifying. And then Black Souls, near and dear to my heart. I'll try to be brief and give the story, but Black Souls started as an informal group of Black employees right after George Floyd was killed. And people just needed a safe place. So the group was originally called We Asked to Be Seen. And it was just really Black employees coming together really naturally. And every other week just having calls. Let's talk. How's everyone feeling? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling safe? What do you need from us? What do we need to go together as a group to the company? And so eventually, New Balance said they were going to formalize these groups, and at New Balance they're called ARGs, or Associate Resource Groups. And Black Souls was one of the first ones, along with the women's group. And so now we have transformed into Black Souls, and I served as chair for 2 years. Again, something, I don't know how I got on the board for We Asked to Be Seen. I just started getting the email invites, and I'm like, I think this is a mistake. I've only been here for 6 months, but everyone feels they need a lawyer, and so I end up on the leadership board for that group, informal leadership board, and then I was really blessed to serve as chair once the group solidified. And it's just really great to see. You hear about people saying like they researched New Balance and deciding whether to work or intern, and Black Souls popped up, and they felt like, okay, I want to go to New Balance because I want to hear more about Black Souls, or I want to be involved. And that's the whole goal, to make sure that Black people are like celebrated in the company, but also in the footwear industry, in the sports industry. We have a number of collaborators who really lean into the group, like a Joe Freshgoods, who is one of New Balance's like main collaborators. We've had Salehi, we've had some numeric skateboarders join, we've had athletes join. So once the athletes, the ambassadors hear about the group, they want to be part of it as well, right? Especially our Black athletes, our ambassadors, because they like to see, you get on a call and you see 50 people who look like you, and they're in all different places in the company. I think it really, really is inspiring for those ambassadors and those athletes. So it's been really, really cool to see Black Souls transform, and the name is getting out there, and people are interested in New Balance because they've heard of Black Souls. And I think that's what everyone at the company, when we first created the group, wanted to happen, and to see it happening, and to see people continue to come into the company, and the first thing they want to do is join Black Souls. It's inspiring, and we're super excited to see how we continue to grow.
It sounds like just an incredible space. And I also have to say the name is fantastic.
I would say,
Agreed.
I think I came up with that and was like, oh my goodness, I'm a creative. Not really. But if this is my one claim to fame as a wannabe creator, I will take it. So
Yes, you
yes,
should take
thank
it.
you.
All right, Damika, we got to talk about video games a little
Okay.
bit before we let you go. One of my favorite video games is NBA 2K. I've probably been playing it for, I don't know, close to 20 years. And I don't know, I guess about like maybe 3 to 5 years ago, I want to say, they started getting all of the non Nike, non Reebok sneaker brands into the game, right? And that's when New Balance came in, and Converse and Adidas and a lot of others. And we can wear those sneakers as with your avatar in my player, and you can when you're playing in my team, the specific sneaker that a player is endorsed by is the sneaker that they have to wear when they play. So a lot of really cool things. Can you talk a little bit about that partnership with Take Two and 2K, and how your sneakers got into the game, and then if you have any favorite games that you've played over your lifetime, love to hear about that too.
Yeah, no, it was really cool for 2K. One, like you said, out of these, you have your Nikes, your Reeboks, your Adidases, but to see 2K reach out to some of the brands that were smaller at the time, but now, continue to grow, and to say, hey, we want to be really authentic. So if you have Jamal Murray, we want Jamal to be in his signature shoe, or we want Kawhi to be in his signature shoe. We were really excited because, again, 2K is part of the culture, sneaker culture, sports culture. So getting approached, having that deal with them has been big for us. I know also in the past 2 to 3 years, we did a deal with 2K where Jamal released a small capsule right, of a shoe that was able to be worn on 2K, but also to sell to a limited number of people, a shoe, and there was limited apparel as well. So that was really cool to take what was in the game and translate it to real life and have people who love Jamal or love New Balance or love the Nuggets to be able to wear his gear in real life was really, really cool. So we're really intentional about making those types of relationships, right? Where we want to be in the game, but how do we bring it to real life? How do we bring the consumers in and the fans in and be able to really relate with, hands on? And that was really cool. So, we're always making sure, of course, with IP and we get it clear, but the athletes, they love it. So you never have a problem getting approval from the athletes because they're like, yes, I can wear my signature shoe in the game. Sign me up. I expect all my friends and family that play 2K to be in my signature shoe, and I expect them to now buy my signature shoe when it's released. So that just again has been cool to see, and for my friends or like someone like you to tell me, I saw that, or yeah, I played with Jamal Murray and we wore his shoe, or I played with Kawhi and he wore his New Balances, was really just great to see.
Yeah.
And then my favorite game, so I did spend time thinking about this. I feel like I'm disappointing everyone because I do not play a lot of video games anymore. But back in the day, I probably until I at least got 13, me and my brother, every few years, my mom would buy both of us a console. And I think my last console was a Sega Dreamcast. So I am aging myself, but it was a Sega Dreamcast, and I was a big Let's Get Ready to Rumble fan with Afro Thunder, who I thought was so cool, and he had the big fro, and he did the dance before he fought, and I just thought he was the coolest thing. And then back in the day when arcades were cool, we were big Crazy Taxi fans. I think if I could still play Crazy Taxi now, I would. I thought it was cool. And then there was a Hercules game that Disney, I think, rigged because you could never get past this one section. Me and my brother researched yesterday as I was preparing for this. I'm like, did anybody ever beat this game? And it was very limited. We found very few people who beat the game. I think it was set up for you to fail at the end. But that was around the time Hercules came out, and we thought it was so cool. So Sega Dreamcast was my last console, but I was into Pac-Man, which I will still play now. I had the Game Boy, I had the Game Boy Color, I had the game, so all the Game Boy things. So I did have the Tony Hawk skateboarder game. When you mentioned that, I was like, we did play that all the time, and I had no idea. I had a skateboard when I was younger. You can see I'm not a skateboarder now, but I did have one when I was younger, I guess to keep us active. So we played that. We played Donkey Kong. We played Sonic. So growing up, um, they were really, that's how me and my brother came together. One of the few ways um, was through competition and playing the games. And now I think he would say, I'm too far out of your league. I can't play with you anymore. But back in the day, I was good at competition. I think I won, I would say, more often than not.
I love hearing that because the Sega Dreamcast, I always, people always ask, what was one of your favorite systems of all time? And it was definitely that. It was just really cool and unique. It had a unique controller. It had a great set of games, and it came out at a time in my life when I could actually, devote some time to playing it, like you said. So
Yeah, I think it was very underrated because after that, then just so many games really started coming out. But I love the Dreamcast, so I am with you on that one, Darius.
all right, Leah, you want to close us out with one last question for
Yeah,
Damika?
yeah. So to end today, we wanted to ask you what's on the horizon for New Balance. Are there any interesting projects or announcements that you can share with us?
I was thinking about this. Nothing I can share, but I will say in the next few weeks, there will be a few athletes introduced that I think everyone will be really, really excited about because I am. It's really time consuming, so I know everyone will be excited. And then we'll continue to sign athletes, and we're continuing to get really top quality athletes. And while we don't sign every athlete, so we don't have, hundreds of athletes on our roster. I think I can still name a lot of them, especially because I work on the deals. But we're getting really high caliber athletes. Coco, will be back at the US Open soon, where she was champion last year. So we're excited to see her. And Tommy Paul, one of our other tennis athletes, just won a bronze in doubles at the Olympics. So we're excited for the US Open to come up and kind of be like the big end of tennis season. So you'll see a lot of Coco soon. And hopefully more New Balance commercials. We got a new song, a few people have noticed. So you'll hopefully start seeing those with basketball coming up, Marvin Harrison at the Cardinals, this fall. So we're excited, but big things are coming up. So I think it should be all uphill.
Great stuff. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. If you have any questions about any of the topics we discussed, you can drop them into the comments, and Leah and I will try to answer them without providing any actual legal advice. I want to say thank you to my partner, Leah Leyendecker, and to Damika Fields from New Balance for coming on today. We will see you next time on Lawyers with Game.